This happened about 2 years ago. I was 29, living alone in a ground floor apartment in a small complex on the east side of town. It wasn't anything special. 8 units total, 4 on the bottom and 4 on top. The building was old, built sometime in the 70s, and it had that look to it. Beige, stucco walls that were cracking in places, metal railings with chipped paint, and a parking lot out front that never seemed to get repaved no matter how many times they said they would. My unit was the last one on the bottom floor, tucked in the back corner of the building. The front door faced the parking lot, and the bedroom window looked out onto a narrow strip of grass that ran along the back fence. Beyond the fence was an alley that connected to the street behind us. I'd been living there for about 1.5 years at that point. It was quiet. Most of my neighbors were older. The couple above me were in their 60s and went to bed by 8 every night. The guy next to me worked offshore and was gone for weeks at a time. I liked it that way. I worked as a dispatcher for a local trucking company, and my shifts rotated, so sometimes I'd be home during the day and gone at night, or the opposite. The irregular schedule meant I was used to being in the apartment at odd hours, and I never really felt unsafe. The neighborhood wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible either, just one of those in-between areas where nothing really happens. Switching between day and night shifts messed with my sleep more than anything else about the job. I started taking melatonin on my off nights just to force my body into some kind of rhythm. It worked well enough. I'd take one about an hour before bed, and I'd be out cold within 30 minutes. Slept like the dead on those nights. Didn't hear a thing until my alarm went off. The first night was a Tuesday in late October. I remember because I had just switched from day shifts to nights, so I was home that evening trying to force myself to stay awake and adjust my sleep schedule. I was sitting on the couch watching something on my laptop with the lights dimmed when I heard a knock at my front door. It was around 11:15 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. I muted the laptop and sat there for a second, listening. Then it came again. 3 knocks, not aggressive, not frantic, just firm and deliberate, like someone knocking on a door during business hours. I got up and walked over. My front door had a peephole, but the porch light outside had been burned out for over a week, and the landlord still hadn't replaced it. So looking through it was basically useless. All I could see was a dark shape. I asked who it was. No answer. I asked again, louder. Nothing. I stood there with my hand on the deadbolt, waiting. After maybe 30 seconds of silence, I heard footsteps walking away. They were calm, unhurried. I looked through the peephole again, and the shape was gone. I went back to the couch, and honestly didn't think much of it. People knock on the wrong door sometimes. Maybe someone was looking for a neighbor. Maybe a delivery driver got confused. I told myself it was nothing and moved on. 3 nights later, it happened again. Same time, almost exactly. 11:10 p.m. 3 knocks. Same rhythm, same firmness. I was in the kitchen this time, making coffee before my shift, and the sound made me freeze mid-pour. I set the pot down and walked to the door. I looked through the peephole, and again, it was too dark to see clearly. But this time I could make out the outline of a person standing very close to the door. Not moving, not speaking, just standing there. I didn't say anything this time. I just watched. The figure stayed for what felt like a full minute, then turned and walked away. I heard the footsteps fade toward the parking lot. I went to the living room window and pulled the blinds just enough to look out toward the front of the building. I could see the edge of the lot from that angle. A car I didn't recognize was parked near the entrance. Dark sedan, no lights on. As I watched, the headlights flicked on and the car pulled out slowly and drove away. That one stuck with me. Not because it was terrifying, but because of the timing. The same approximate time, the same knock pattern, and the same silence when I spoke. I started to wonder if it was the same person from Tuesday, but even then, I rationalized it. Maybe it was someone casing apartments. Maybe it was a drunk who kept wandering to the wrong unit. I told myself if it happened again, I'd call the police. It happened again 4 nights later. This time I was ready. The landlord had finally replaced the porch light bulb the day before, but I left it off on purpose because I wanted to see if they'd come back under the same conditions. I know that sounds stupid. Looking back, I should have done the opposite, but I wasn't thinking like a victim yet. I was thinking like someone who wanted answers. At 11:08 p.m., the knocks came. 3 of them, identical to before. I was sitting in the dark living room with my phone in my hand. I had the camera app open. I crept to the door, held my breath, and pressed my eye to the peephole. This time, I could see a little more because my eyes had already adjusted to the dark. It was a man, average height, wearing a dark jacket with the collar turned up. He was standing about 2 feet from the door, facing it directly. His hands were at his sides. He wasn't fidgeting or looking around. He was just staring at the door like he was waiting for it to open on its own. I watched him for probably 45 seconds. He didn't move. He didn't knock again. He just stood there. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. I couldn't tell what it was. He crouched down, and I lost sight of him below the peephole's angle. I heard a faint scraping sound near the bottom of the door. Then he stood back up, turned, and walked away. Same calm pace, same direction toward the lot. I waited until I heard a car start and pull away before I opened the door. I looked down and felt my stomach drop. Wedged into the gap between the bottom of the door and the threshold was a small, folded piece of paper. I picked it up and unfolded it. Written in neat block letters was a single word: soon. I called the police. They came out, took the note, and wrote a report. They checked the parking lot and the area around the building, but found nothing. One of the officers told me it was probably just someone trying to mess with me and that I should get a doorbell camera. He said it casually, like he was recommending a restaurant. I asked if they could increase patrols in the area, and he said they'd try. I bought a camera the next day, one of those battery-powered ones you stick above the door with adhesive. I set it up, connected it to my phone, and tested it. The motion detection range was about 15 feet, and the night vision was decent. For the first time in a week, I felt like I had some control. 4 nights passed with nothing. No knocks, no car, no notes. I started to relax. I figured whoever it was had seen the camera and moved on. I even started leaving the porch light on again. I told myself it was over. On the 5th night, at exactly 11:12 p.m., I got a motion alert on my phone. I opened the app and watched the live feed. A man was walking up to my door. Same build, same dark jacket. He stopped in front of the door and looked directly at the camera. He didn't try to hide his face, but it was partially obscured by the collar of his jacket and a baseball cap I hadn't noticed before. He stared at the camera for about 10 seconds. Then he smiled, not a grin, not a smirk, a slow, deliberate smile like he wanted me to see it. Then he knocked 3 times and walked away. I was shaking. I saved the footage, called the police again, and showed them the video when they arrived. They took it seriously this time but told me there wasn't much they could do with just a partial face. They suggested I file for a protective order, but against whom? I didn't know who this person was. I had never seen him before. The visit stopped for almost 2 weeks after that. I was barely sleeping. Every noise made me jump. I had started keeping a baseball bat next to my bed, and I triple-checked the locks every night before I even sat down. My coworkers noticed I was off. I didn't tell them why. Then one morning, after a night shift, I came home around 7 a.m., and something felt wrong the second I walked in. I couldn't place it at first. Everything looked normal. The furniture was where it should be. The TV was off, the kitchen was clean, but there was a smell. Faint, but out of place. It was like cigarette smoke mixed with something else. Cologne, maybe. I don't smoke. No one who has ever been in my apartment smokes. I walked through every room. Nothing was missing. Nothing was moved. But when I got to the bedroom, I noticed the window. It was closed and locked, just like I'd left it. But the blinds were different. I always leave them angled downward so no one can see in from outside. They were angled upward. Someone had touched them. Someone had been at that window, or worse, someone had been inside. I checked the back fence from outside. The gate to the alley was open. I always keep it latched, and on the ground, just inside the fence line, I found 2 cigarette butts. They weren't weathered. They were fresh. Someone had stood in my backyard, smoked 2 cigarettes, and either looked through my window or come inside through it while I was at work. I called the police again. This time, a detective came, He looked at the cigarette butts, the window, and the gate. He checked the window frame and found light scratches on the outside of the latch housing. Someone had tried to pry it, or had pried it and closed it behind them. He told me to stay with someone else for a few days if I could. I didn't have anywhere to go. My family lives out of state, and I wasn't close enough with anyone locally to crash at their place indefinitely. So I stayed. I bought a window lock bar for every window in the apartment and added a chain latch to the front door. I also set up a second camera in the bedroom, pointed at the window. Things were quiet for 10 days. I was starting to think the detective's visit had spooked whoever it was. Maybe they saw the police car. Maybe they realized I was taking this seriously now. I was still on edge, but the raw fear had dulled into something more like chronic anxiety. I was functioning, just barely. On the nights I couldn't settle down, I'd double up on the melatonin. 2 pills instead of 1. Those nights I slept deep and dreamless, which felt like a mercy at the time. On day 11, I woke up in the middle of the night. Not because of a sound, because of a feeling. I'd taken 2 melatonin before bed, so the fact that I woke up at all surprised me. Usually on a double dose, nothing short of a fire alarm could pull me out. But something did. You know that sensation when you can tell someone is looking at you, even with your eyes closed? That's what pulled me out of sleep. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling for a few seconds, listening. The apartment was silent. No knocking, no footsteps, nothing. Then I turned my head toward the bedroom window. The blinds were angled upward again, and through the slats, in the narrow gap between 2 of them, I could see the outline of a face. Someone was standing right outside the glass, inches away, looking in. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just lay there, staring at the shape, and the shape stared back. I don't know how long it lasted. It felt like minutes. Then the face pulled away, slowly, like they weren't in any rush. I heard the soft crunch of footsteps on the grass, then the creak of the back gate. I grabbed my phone and checked the bedroom camera. It had triggered a recording. When I played it back, the infrared showed it clearly. A figure standing at the window, hands cupped around their face, pressed against the glass. They stood there for over 4 minutes before I woke up. 4 minutes of watching me sleep. I moved out the following week. I didn't wait for the lease to end. I paid the penalty, packed everything I could into my car, and left. I didn't even clean the place. I drove to my parents' house 3 states away and stayed there for 2 months before I found a new apartment in a completely different city. The police never identified the person. The doorbell camera footage wasn't clear enough for facial recognition, and the detective told me the case would stay open, but that without more evidence, there wasn't much they could do. He was honest about it, which I appreciated, but it didn't make me feel any better. Here's the part that still keeps me awake, though. On moving day, I was throwing everything into boxes as fast as I could. I didn't care about being neat. I just wanted to be gone. When I got to the bathroom, I swept everything off the counter into a bag. Toothbrush, deodorant, razor, and the melatonin bottle I'd been taking from for months. I almost didn't think twice about it. But as I tossed the bottle into the bag, something rattled differently than usual. Not the soft clatter of pills shifting around, something heavier, denser. I opened the bottle and poured a few into my palm. They looked the same color, same shape, same size. But one of them felt slightly thicker between my fingers, heavier. I held it up to the light and noticed the faintest seam running around the middle, like 2 halves pressed together. I broke it apart. Inside was a white powdery core that my melatonin didn't have. Not a trace of the usual chalky purple. Just compressed white powder packed into a shell that looked identical to the real thing. I dumped the rest of the bottle on the counter and started breaking them open one by one. Out of maybe 20 remaining pills, 6 were wrong. Same exterior, different insides. Someone had opened my melatonin bottle, replaced a portion of the pills with something else, and resealed them. They were mixed in randomly, so I'd never take the same thing 2 nights in a row. Some nights I'd get real melatonin. Some nights I'd get whatever this was. I stood in that bathroom for a long time. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, because I understood what it meant. Every night I swallowed one of those pills and climbed into bed. I was gambling. On the real nights, I slept normally. On the other nights, I slept like something heavier than melatonin had pulled me under. Those were the nights I never heard anything, never felt anything, never stirred. That's why someone could stand at my window for 4 minutes before my body finally managed to drag me awake. That's why, on the nights I doubled my dose, I slept so deep and dreamless that my body didn't register a sound, a presence, a creak of the floor, or the weight of someone else in the room. I thought I was a heavy sleeper. I wasn't. I was being drugged in my own home, by my own hand, every time I reached for that bottle before bed. The intruder didn't need to overpower my locks or outsmart my cameras. He just needed me to take my pill and close my eyes. And I did, night after night after night. I practically volunteered. The detective had the remaining pills tested. He never told me what was in them. He just said, "Don't take anything from that apartment with you." I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means the substance was dangerous or if it means they found more things in that apartment that I shouldn't know about. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. I've been in my new place for over a year now. New city, new job, second-floor apartment with a security door downstairs and cameras in every hallway. I check every lock twice before bed. I leave lights on in rooms I'm not using. I sleep with the blinds shut so tight that not a sliver of light gets through. I don't take melatonin anymore. I don't take anything. Some nights I lie awake for hours because my body won't shut down on its own and I just have to wait it out. But I'd rather be awake and afraid than asleep and defenseless, because I keep thinking about those 6 pills, and I keep thinking about how many I had already taken before I found them. And what I keep coming back to, the thing I will never be able to stop asking myself, is this. On the nights those pills pulled me under, what did he do in that apartment while I was lying there? What did he do in that room? How close did he get? And the worst part, the part I haven't told anyone until now, is that some mornings I'd wake up and something would feel slightly off. The blanket folded differently than how I left it. The pillow shifted a few inches, a glass of water on the nightstand that I could have sworn was fuller when I fell asleep. I always told myself I was imagining things, that I probably moved in my sleep and forgot. Now I know I wasn't imagining anything. I just couldn't wake up to see it.